Well, this is weird. The camcorder worked just fine earlier today. Oh, come on, what is this? I don't understand why Darling had to buy these old camcorders. There's perfectly fine and affordable options on the market. This is fascinating. It is almost like there's this static electricity among the air. Oh no, 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 no. Now I know I've said that I'm not gonna traverse into any game related content because I've done that before. I did that for about 2 or 3 videos going into photo modes, and even though I think that goes into photography and storytelling and stuff like that, it still felt like it didn't fit, and this fits even less. But let me just tell you why I think I should be talking to you about Alan Wake 2. It all starts with Remedy, that is a Finnish video game developer. Now when Finland is put on the map, Finnish people like myself like to talk about it. That though is a mediocre reason. The real reason is Remedy's storytelling, their style of storytelling that I want to bring forth that makes things, what's the word? Exciting.
Very, very exciting.
This isn't a game review, this isn't about the gameplay or the gameplay mechanics, this is about storytelling, about Alan Wake's story, how I experienced it, and why I think it is a masterpiece in gaming history and storytelling itself. Okay, everything seems to be working fine. Weird static there. Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Wealth from the Bureau of Control's Research Department. What we do in the research department, we specialize in the research of altered world events, AWE for short. But I'm not gonna go into the details. If you want to know more about FBC itself, just look it up. You'll probably find some weird conspiracy theories, among others. So, the FBC is going through some changes, and Dr. Darling, the head of our department, is having some time off, so I am left off with doing these recordings, and no other place than from the comfort of my home office. Yes, the bigger picture. I'm just gonna go through a quick recap and keep it short and simple. Now all this started 13 years ago when Alan Wake and his wife decided to head to Bright Falls for a vacation. Bright Falls is a small town in the Pacific Northwest. Now Alan Wake is a famous writer, and this trip was his wife's idea because Alan was having a case of writer's block. Now this is where it gets interesting. They seemingly had rented a cabin at Cauldron Lake that none of the residents at Bright Falls has no recollection of. Those who have some kind of memory of that cabin remember it being destroyed in a volcano eruption back in the 70s. Now when they arrived at that cabin, Alice disappeared. And that is about the time that we got our first warning of an AWE. Now we sent a research team and some agents to the scene, and what we found was Alice Wake, not Alan Wake. Alan Wake had disappeared. Now the other things that we found were traces of Alan in the forms of a manuscript pages. Indicated by those manuscript pages and that story, there was this dark presence tormenting Bright Falls and influencing Alan Wake to write this story to set the dark presence free from the dark place. Now this indicates that when Alan Wake wrote that story, he altered reality itself. And what he was able to do was rewrite the ending of that manuscript to change places with Alice, to set Alice free instead of the dark place, and he himself is now locked in the dark place. Now Bright Falls itself is a beautiful small town. It holds a special place in my heart, and the people there, let's just say they're intriguing. Now this case reminds me of an AWE that happened back in the 90s. The research and the reports were called something in the form of Twin Peaks. I read all about Twin Peaks when I started my career at the FBC. It's really exciting. Now, Remedy being a Finnish game developer means that they've taken some bits and pieces from Finnish culture and nailed it down to the storytelling and the locations. You hear and read a lot of Finnish words and sayings.
There's sauna, sauna ja vihta, Suomi, Finland, Pulla, Karjalan piirakka.
You have locations like Watery that is sort of like this small Finnish town that is entwined with Finnish culture. There are a lot of Finnish signs there. There's a dude singing karaoke. The beer is Finnish.
Beer to the rescue. Bring out your inner Wolverine with Ahma beer.
Ahma means Wolverine, by the way. There's even a coffee world. And how does coffee entwine with Finnish culture? Well, the Finns consume about 12 kilograms of coffee per capita annually, which puts them on top of the world in coffee consumption. Even the characters and the actors are Finnish known actors, like Peter Frantzen, who plays the Koskela brothers, can be seen playing Prince Harold in The Vikings. Then there's Martti Suosalo, who is a known older Finnish actor, and Ilkka Villi himself being the face of Alan Wake. Then there's Sam Lake himself, who plays like 3 different characters in this game. He plays himself, he plays the real world Alex Casey, and then he plays the hardened detective in The Dark Place, Alex Casey. If Sam Lake looks like Max Payne to you, well, hell, he's even Max Payne. Even the woods and the locations themselves feel really natural, even though the woods are dark all the time. As you can see, we live in the darkness most of our days because winter is long and the days are short. Now, when I'm running through the woods in the game, I'm actually more excited than horrified of what's behind the corner. I'm eagerly waiting to see what's behind the corner just to see what's gonna come up next. What's the puzzle? What's the enemy? Is it another Taken? Is it something else? And even the Taken themselves, they just feel like Finnish, you know, narcomaniacs running around in the woods and trying to steal your money. And that doesn't actually happen in Finland. Well, not a lot at least. Now, even in the first big fight scene that you have in the game, there's a sauna by the lake. And all I could think about, even though there was horrifying things happening around me, was, oh damn, I wish it was summer. And even though my fiance hates horror games and hates horror itself, can't even watch a horror movie, she had the time to glance me inspecting a sauna and shout to me, "Close the door!" 13 years without any AWEs, and suddenly we got one. What we decided to do was send Agent Estevez to investigate that AWE. What we knew at the time when Estevez left the bureau was that there were 2 FBI agents on site investigating a case of a ritualistic murder. Now, the victim seems to be one of their own, Robert Nightingale. Nightingale has been missing for 13 years, and back 13 years ago, he was stationed in Bright Falls investigating Alan Wake. Now, what the manuscript pages suggest is that Nightingale was taken by the Dark Presence and hasn't been seen since. Now, the FBC tried looking for Nightingale. Interviewing Nightingale would have been interesting, to say the least. But FBC had long lost hope of finding Nightingale alive. Okay, so Alan Wake's story, Alan Wake 2's story, is a standalone story, sort of, because you can play it without playing Alan Wake 1 or Control, but of course, if you have the knowledge of those games, it gets more interesting by 100 miles. Seeing the familiar faces, seeing how those memos you read in Control just come together, and well, the story altogether just comes together piece by piece. The story itself has detective mystery, it has thriller, it has horror. Got you there, didn't I? It even has some musical parts. Now you start out the story with Saga Anderson and Alex Casey trying to solve a murder that involves Robert Nightingale, an old FBI agent just mysteriously, magically disappeared 13 years prior. Now what helps you out with these investigations is this special thing that Saga has, a mind place, where you kinda just put all the evidence together and solve those cases and those mysteries that you're given. Now while I assembled those bits and pieces of different investigations, I haven't felt anything like it. It felt like being in a true detective series like the one on HBO, you know, and it felt real somehow. Now not long into the story, things start to escalate. People taken by the dark presence start to appear, and one of them is Robert Nightingale himself. Now after defeating Nightingale, Alan Wake himself mysteriously appears to a beach near Cauldron Lake, and that's where things get interesting. You start to experience Alan's journey in the Dark Place. Now the Dark Place is a fictional and horrifying version of New York itself. Alan wrote these books, like these detective books about Alex Casey, who solved mysteries and murders in New York. Now while Saga is trying to figure out what is happening in the real world, Alan is trying to alter the Dark Place by writing a story that would lead him out of there. Now Alan and Saga are able to communicate in certain points where the Dark Place and the real world connect, not as greatly as Cauldron Lake, but still connects. And that makes Saga kind of confused because Alan is already out. So what's going on here? And this is just the tip of the iceberg. All the characters have been well written, they have been well acted, and you actually feel like you get to know them. Like the Koskela brothers having different kind of things going on, owning a coffee themed theme park or their own brewery making their own beer. Now both characters get help from different characters like Ahti, who knows his way mysteriously around the FBC, around Bright Falls, around the Dark Place, and that just feels kinda off, but Ahti is greatly acted and Martti Suosalo just does a great job with him. Now what I think is unique about Remedy's storytelling is using live action methods. They sort of used live action since Max Payne, if you think about it. Max Payne used these comic strips where you know, all the events that happened between gameplay was acted out. And then there's Control using that even more, and now Alan Wake, where it is used a lot, especially in the Dark Place, and that distinguishes the Dark Place from the real world when you see the kind of live action events that are happening. Now the story unfolds bit by bit, taking a turn now and then, just keeping you on your toes, wanting to know what is coming up next, wanting to play more even though the chapter just ended, and you know, they leave you at a cliffhanger, just wanting to cry out, give me some more. Now what the story feels like to me is something like a David Lynch Twin Peaks kind of thing, and I cannot not compare this to Twin Peaks because Twin Peaks is really close to my heart and it feels a lot like that. There's also some bits and pieces of Stephen King, and then there's bits and pieces of True Detective, like I said. All those things combined with the locations and the characters are just things that tingle my brain away and want me to play more, want me to look at the story, just see the story more. If this was a movie, I would watch it 10 times, 20 times, 100 times. Now I have no idea when the next Alan Wake is coming out, but I know that they're remaking Max Payne games, the 1 and 2, I guess. So I hope Max Payne 1 and 2 somehow is gonna be a part of this universe that Remedy has going on here. What is that? Is that a doctor's coat? Where did this come from? I don't own a doctor's coat. Now, the Dark Place itself is truly a fascinating thing as a concept. It seems that the primary contact point to the Dark Place is Cauldron Lake itself. But there are minor contact points around Bright Falls where you can interact with the Dark Place. Now the Dark Place is an ocean. It is a changing ocean. It is acceptable to change. How I've come to this conclusion is the fact of reading those manuscripts it indicates that Alan Wake was able to rewrite a new ending to those manuscripts, and that suggests that it is acceptable to change. The changes, though, only happened around Bright Falls. The outside world is not affected by those changes, at least not yet. In some cases, the dark place plays with your mind. It makes the mind think that it is reality, thus making it hard for the mind distinguish reality from the dark place itself. The fact is that the dark place itself is an ocean, and to go deeper into details about the dark place will require more time to be explained. This is quite odd. I remember having a burger in my hand. Now, like I said before, the locations, the world itself is really interesting. You get to experience two different locations that are really important to the story. You get to experience Bright Falls, this small town in the Pacific Northwest, and then you get to experience the dark and horrifying New York that is the dark place. That is the version, Alan Wake's version of the dark place. Now, Bright Falls was just more of my thing. I'm not saying that the dark place was a bad thing. It was just different. It was cool. It was really nice to play that Alan Wake mystery of a dark place that it was. But still, Bright Falls hit me even more. Now, even though the town isn't real, it made me feel that it is real, because those kind of small, unique towns are portrayed in different kind of, you know, TV shows and movies where mysteries and murders and things happen all the time. Now, Bright Falls and its surroundings just add a layer to the storytelling that I've never felt before, because it has such a big meaning to the story itself. From the diner to the police station, everything is just something that holds on to the story, that is meaningful to the story. You have to visit these locations over and over again, and there are unique characters there that you have to visit. You know, it's just, they're just something. And like I said, I cannot not compare this to Twin Peaks. The diner looks exactly like from Twin Peaks, and the police station, the meeting room, everything, those coffee cups at the meeting room table, it just feels like there was this Twin Peaks meeting going on before I just walked in. Now, even the residents and their uniqueness and their comments and what they were saying just made it feel even more real. Now, like I said, the dark place is different. It is acceptable to change, and Alan Wake is able to change different kind of scenery and events with his writing. Now, this manipulates those events, those pathways, that gives Alan Wake even more of a chance to get out from the dark place. Now, Alan's writing connects actually both worlds in some cases, and it changes both worlds in some cases. You see things progress, evolving and changing as Alan goes through the dark place. And like I said, mixing up the dark place with the live action events makes the experience even more trippy than it has to be, and that is just great. Estevez's report unfolds the recent events in Bright Falls, and that report is no less than fascinating. The dark presence itself that Agent Anderson came in contact with was actually the dark presence itself, Mr. Scratch. Thus meaning that Alan Wake himself is still in the dark place. 13 years ago, after the first events of Bright Falls, we interviewed Alice Wake, but she had no recollection of the dark place, as if she had forgotten it all. It's been a while since we've heard anything about Alice Wake. It's almost like she's gone looking for Alan. I just hope that's not the case. End of recording.